In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, we'll discuss the proposed changes to Cyprus' renewable energy policy.
The amount of renewable that the grid can accommodate without collapsing, basically retaining its stability and reliability, can be 20 to 25% of the total demand.
We'll hear from Hungary's ambassador at large for energy security.
And how we are looking to connect this group of countries to the LNG market and in the LNG as well as in the Southern Gas Corridor, how the Eastern Mediterranean could play an important alternative source of natural gas for our countries.
We'll meet the Russian founders of a new charitable foundation launched in Nicosia this week.
First of all, we moved to the Cyprus permanently, and we felt that we should give back to the country where we feel home.
And let's disrupt Cyprus, a challenge laid down at the Cyprus Kickoff event for Global Entrepreneurship Week.
Now it's done, we have to face reality and move forward in doing things on our own.
I'm sure you've read stories in the local press this last week about a change to the government's policy on renewable energy. Well, it's caused quite a furore, and with me on the programme today we have Konstantinos Hadjistassou, who's an energy researcher with the Chios Centre at the University of Cyprus. Konstantinos, I know that no decisions seem to have been firmly taken yet, but it does seem illogical if they want to suddenly cut the net metering solution that they had installed quite some time ago and seemed to be working and attracting customers and small investors, and then suddenly changing this to two huge parks. Is there any sense in the decision?
Actually, the sequel, what we expected was to be a continuation of the net metering we're installing like in people's houses and small-scale PV power generation, electric generation. So this is unexpected because a lot of businesses, small businesses, and a lot of consumers, like domestic users, people, households, were investing on that in terms of filing applications. Some businesses were born around this, so they were expecting there is a continuation. That's why they have invested heavily towards that direction. And it was a surprise, to be honest, how the government came up with the decision.
You have to wonder what's going to happen to those small businesses and individual households who've laid out a considerable sum of money for this, because when you set up a system like this, my understanding is that it takes several years for you to recoup the outlay. Now, if they're not going to be allowed to sell their excess energy to the grid, they've just wasted an awful lot of money.
Actually, these people that they have already filed the applications and they're waiting. I mean, the previous guys that they were involved in this, they have long-term contracts with the EC that the EC is buying the electricity. But if the government is coming up with new plans to invest in bigger power plants, most probably these subsidies or feed-in tariffs, as they call them, the terminology, they're going to go down as time goes by. So in terms of sustainability, this is not a prudent decision that has been made, or they need to rethink how they will invest in these people and households in the future.
Now, I know that we have to have a certain percentage of our energy requirements met by renewable sources.
Yes.
That's understandable. It's a European policy. But again, I'm not clear on this, because I had thought when I talked to people about this before that the grid could only accept a certain percentage of the total outlay in energy from renewable sources. And if this new plan goes ahead, am I right in thinking that the two big photovoltaic parks will actually be producing more than the grid can cope with?
So one of the big changes that happened after the Maria explosion and the economic crisis, we had a dramatic drop in the electricity demand. So the peak demand was 4 years ago 1,200 megawatts, and now it dropped, I was looking at it today, to around 560 megawatts. So we're talking about half of what we were demanding in the previous time. So in that, by that logic, the amount of renewable that the grid can accommodate without collapsing, basically retaining its stability and reliability, can be 20 to 25% of the total demand. For example, if we're generating 600 megawatts, the demand, 20 to 30% of that can be fed into the grid, and which originates from renewables.
It will go up in summer, though. We've got a lot of tourists using air conditioners in the hotels and so on. So if we go to a sort of heated summer scenario, maybe. We're talking what, 800-900 maximum?
800, yes, because a lot of businesses have already closed, so this demand is not going to pick up straight away, so it might take some years. But in the meantime, because this whatever installation in terms of renewables it gets connected to the grid is going to be subsidized, and the people investing in that will want to recuperate their money. At least in the short term, this doesn't look sustainable, both for small producers and large producers, both for photovoltaics and solar thermal, which are the new plants that they are being plant.
You say, let's say 25% of the output of the grid. So if we're talking 800 kilowatts, then we're looking at what? 100?
150
if we're being really generous, yeah?
Yes.
And
Megawatt,
how much are we actually megawatts? Yeah, how much are we actually going to get if this new plan goes ahead?
I mean, these new plants, they are intended to be 100 megawatts, and we already have a capacity somewhere, for example, 82, I think it's in wind energy, and also we have something around 50 in photovoltaics. So add up, and it turns out something between 200 and 230 megawatts for renewable. So this is a sizable amount. It exceeds the 25%, depending on the final energy demand. So this is going to be problematic if, for example, we have at the same time, electricity generated from photovoltaics, and also the wind is blowing in a good day. And so
what happens in that situation? Because if it's all does it all feed automatically into the grid? Because then it will collapse, won't it?
Yeah, I mean the EEC, which is regulating this stuff and basically monitors the health of the electricity grid, is going to respond to that if there is a surge in power generation, for example. And also there needs to be a backup. Electricity is something the system collapses if they lose a power generator. So this is what creates trouble into the system. You cannot indefinitely add power generation to the system without having the risk of something contingent happening. So these guys, they're waiting things, and there is a study going on at this point in time in order to assess how much the grid can sustain. And it's good to make people know that our grid is not yet smart. I mean, it's not as advanced as the grids they have in Germany, Denmark, and other EU countries. So there needs to be investment where this technology is being upgraded, and who's going to pay for that. So there are
shouldn't we put that smart technology in place before we start trying to put all the other technology in place to add to the grid? I mean, it sounds to me a bit like we're starting the public transport system before we've built the railway stations.
Ideally, yes, we'd like to invest in that, but remember that the EC right now is about to become privatized. There are issues with funding, there are issues with its viability, so a lot of things hang on this, and it looks...
In which case, why on earth are we taking decisions about where the res is coming from right now?
We have EU commitments. By 2020 we have to produce like 13% of the electricity from renewables. So we're committed in that. These are binding targets. We cannot.
And at the moment we're producing how much?
At this moment, I think last year it was around 7%. But this fluctuates, okay? It depends on the generation.
So we could reach the 13% with one decent-sized photovoltaic park that wouldn't create half the problems you've talked about, and then wait and see if we can get the smart system in place before we even try and upgrade it.
Actually, there is a need to have a diversity of power generation. But Cyprus is not renowned, let's be realistic about its wind potential. We have so much solar energy. We are the first in the world in terms of per capita, solar thermosiphones installed in the houses. So they have already committed a lot of capacity in wind energy. So now they're pushing towards the direction of solar. So there has to be a mix in terms of who generates and what generates. But what I see out of this is the people's perception of photovoltaics, and this is something that is very popular right now, and I think we need to keep people aware of this revolution, say, in terms of meeting their energy demands and realizing how much they generate and they consume. So there are a lot of positive things to that, besides like the large power generators which are emerging in this country.
Very quickly, what would you say the solution is?
The solution would be to negotiate and see what people demand, even if they want to have like a public vote where people can feed their knowledge, for example, or their needs into what needs to be done. This has to be taken into account through, for example, like a public debate. It's not, somebody takes a decision and goes authoritatively and says, okay, we're installing full large-scale systems. There needs to be a balance, and right now who is winning is the large generators. So the small domestic and small-scale systems, they have to basically be part of the equation.
Konstantinos Hadjistassou from the Chios Research Centre at the University of Cyprus.
Online and as a podcast, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Dr. Anita Orban is the Ambassador at Large for Energy Security of Hungary. She was in Cyprus this week to attend a Visegrad conference that we spoke about on last week's programme. Her particular take at the forum on Eastern Mediterranean Energy Cooperation with the Visegrad Group was why it's an ideal destination for new entrants in the LNG market. She joins us on the programme. Anita, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
What was the thrust, first of all, of your talk?
The main point, the main arguments I made, I introduced the Visegrad cooperation, which is 4 countries of Central Eastern Europe. That's Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary. And Hungary is now the rotating chair until July. And I talked about what we are doing as a Visegrad group to develop a robust internal energy market among all countries, which, if we just talk about natural gas now, it's a 42 billion cubic meters market per annum. And I also addressed the issue of what diversification options we are looking at, how we are looking to connect this Visegrad group of countries to the Southern Gas Corridor, and how we are looking to connect this group of countries to the LNG market, and in the LNG as well as in the Southern Gas Corridor, how the Eastern Mediterranean could play an important alternative source of natural gas for our countries.
Of course, all the countries are in the European Union, and that
Yes.
has its own energy policy as a bloc. So how do you marry the two together without there being any conflict?
The Visegrad cooperation is an integral part of the EU energy market. So we want to build our energy market within the all EU energy market. If you look at the European energy market development infrastructure as well as regulation, you see a pretty diverse picture. We have at EU level a goal to have an integrated energy market by 2014. We are in 2014. And now the European Commission is just preparing a report about the status of play when it comes to the internal energy market and presents to the Council in June. In the western part of Europe, we have more or less a robust energy market. In Central Eastern Europe, where the Visegrad countries are, we are short of being able to say that we have an energy market. The Visegrad cooperation gives us an excellent framework to facilitate the process at a regional level. So what we are doing in the Visegrad cooperation, we are translating the EU-wide goals, EU-wide regulations, laws, and try to implement it, facilitate it among the 4 countries so that then it can be integrated into the wider region.
And of course, the wider region, we have to bring in Ukraine, the crisis that's going on there, and the role of Russia, because in geopolitical terms, the energy security craved by the European Union, and I guess the Visegrad countries and everybody, is very much in the balance at the moment if things sort of blow up there, isn't it? So how is that playing out in terms of policy?
You know, this is one of the most important questions. When we started this year, the dossier, you know, in the EU we talk about dossiers. The dossier which was on the table was the 2030 targets. How do we translate the 2050 roadmap into the 2030 targets in terms of climate change, of course, renewable, energy efficiency and CO2 cuts. And then, as the Ukrainian crisis started to escalate, energy security considerations skyrocketed into the middle of the discussion at the European level. You have seen the British non-paper on the table, the Polish recommendation to creating an energy union, and so on. Out of the 4 Visegrad countries, 3 are the immediate neighbors of Ukraine: Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. And out of the 4 countries, 3 countries are supplied by the pipeline coming from Russia via Ukraine. That's Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. In case of any supply issue, these countries are the first to be affected.
And you don't have any backup. Is that really another reason why you're here? Because you could make use of another source that would mean you didn't have all your eggs in one basket.
There are a couple of issues here. After 2009, we did a lot of market integration via interconnectors. So the countries are much better off than they were in 2009 because we inaugurated many interconnectors, among them the Slovak-Hungarian interconnectors, and we put on reverse flows, west to east direction on the infrastructure. For example, Czech-Slovak pipeline. This is one. Second, it is important to note that we are talking about different time frames. Short term, mid term, and long term. Short term is, as Commissioner Oettinger said, is 15 months. How the EU as such is preparing in terms of energy for the next 15 months. Mid-term is the 3-4 years time. If I may come back, in the 15 months you cannot get big infrastructure done, right? In the next 15 months what you can do, fill in storages, do some reverse flows, get some regulation in place and so on. The midterm is 3-4 years. There you can do a lot. There you can really put in missing interconnectors. There you can build more storages. There you can put in reverse flows. And if we talk about 3-4 years time, new alternative like US LNG can also come on board. And then there is the mid to long term perspective, 8 years, 10 years, and down the road. And here comes in, of course, the Eastern Mediterranean. How fast the Eastern Mediterranean resources will come on board, how fast they will be able to be exported, what will be the export route, and whether all markets will be lucrative markets for the Eastern Mediterranean resources, and the other way around as well, whether the price on which the Eastern Mediterranean resources will appear on the market will be a competitive price for us.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Dr. Anita Orban, Ambassador at Large for Energy Security of Hungary.
Keep up to date with events and news in Cyprus with the Cyprus News Digest. You can stream it live on mycyradio.eu, listen again on the Cyprus Mail website, or download the podcast to your phone or tablet and listen anytime, anywhere.
The Dashin Foundation was launched earlier this week in Nicosia. Andrey Dashin is a well-known businessman based in Limassol, and along with his wife Julia, they've formed a charitable organisation which aims to give support to NGOs and other associations working in Cyprus. Why, I asked Julia Dashin, had they set up the foundation?
We decided to establish a foundation some time ago because first of all, we moved to the Cyprus permanently, and we felt that we should give back to the country where we feel home. So we going to raise awareness about the problems in Cyprus and to attract others to help.
It's a big thing that you're doing because I think you said that you've put up €500,000 for the first year. How are you going to spend that money? How are you going to make sure that it does the most work that it can do?
First of all, I think that we need to rely on the board of experts in this area for sure, because basically I'm not a big fan of implementing this role for a long time. And I hope that in nearest future we're going to be able to collect the most honorable and proficient people in this area. And this board is going to decide on this matter.
So you've put up the money, you're looking, I think, at a very wide prospect of possible NGOs to help. What are the criteria? What are the categories?
It's not that wide when it comes to practical help. Because maybe it sounds $500,000, it sounds a lot, but when it comes down to the specific needs, it's not that a lot. I don't think that it's going to be that widely noticed, first of all, from the very beginning. But to focus on any specific NGOs or any specific needs of people, we need to gain some experience. I can't say that today we have this sort of experience, because I would feel much freely to speak about Russian charity foundations and Russian aspects of philanthropy. But here in Cyprus, I've been living here only for 2 years, so probably we need to gain more experience and also to rely on other people's experience. But as I said, I believe anyway that we need to focus on 2 or 3 areas of activity, because we cannot splash our resources and our money around all problems of Cyprus society. And basically, I think that the most obvious choices probably it's environmental projects and help to kids and to improve the health of kids in need. I think these 2 obvious areas at least.
You're a very big believer, I think, in people, as you put it, who are financially successful, taking on a responsibility that an awful lot of perhaps rich people don't take on. Where do you get this philosophy from?
It's pretty much simple, because one day probably I understood that looking outside from your own Mercedes windows, if you see outside the destitution and people in need and unfairness of our society, this window of your Mercedes doesn't help you. So basically you need to apply, and obviously you have these abilities and you have this strength if you are wealthy and influential enough to help. And I think it's I believe it's quite natural desire, a natural urge.
I was going to ask you, Julia, because you also, I think, have said that your whole attitude to society changed when you became a mother.
Yes, maternity changed me completely, because I became more sharing, giving, understanding. I already really can't be indifferent to the problems of our people. And it comes with maternity, because, when you're carrying a baby, you're becoming a whole world for somebody else, and you changed. So I can't be anymore as I used to be. So, in general, indifference to the problems of our people is a sign of immaturity of soul. So it comes with age, possibly, not just with children.
And can I ask you finally about the volunteering aspect of the work? Because I think that's another area where you're hoping, if you like, to change the mindset in Cyprus and to engender a culture of volunteering here, which is lacking.
Yeah, obviously what we met already and the project that we have conducted here and attracted volunteers for help, actually it showed us a sort of lack of organization in this movement. But anyway, personally I saw the young people who really wanted to help, and we have these volunteers. Maybe we have a lack of organization of these volunteers, but I think it's more manageable and changeable problem than if you wouldn't have these people. And I think that one part of our job is going to be maybe to organize somehow volunteering movement. And our goal is going to be during our work to select the specific set of volunteers who are the most eager to help society, the most socially mature people. And maybe this set of young people is going to be the core of volunteering movement in future.
And of course, as a businessman, I'm interested in your views on volunteering, because I personally believe that if you've got a volunteering activity on your CV, it makes people who are potentially going to employ you very much more interested in the breadth of your experience as a successful businessman. What about that?
I think that, of course, if you have on your CV some experience in volunteering, I think it shows, first of all, sort of your own responsibility and your own attitude towards society. And also, I think it gives you a good opportunity to gain some experience and some organizational experience. And I also think that businessmen who are actually looking for young generation, this mark on CV volunteering, it helps a lot, I think.
Andrey and Julia Dashin, and you can find out all the details of that new foundation launched this week in Nicosia at www.dashinfoundation.org. On Monday afternoon, there was a very important event taking place in Nicosia. It was the kick-off of Global Entrepreneurship Week, GEW as it's known. And with me on the programme this evening, I have Martin Luxembourg and Michalis Stangos, both of whom are very much involved in this, and indeed no newcomers, I think, to GEW. Martin, what were you actually doing on Monday?
On Monday, I gave a presentation on how the Netherlands worked on the entrepreneurship ecosystem for the last 8 years. And we have been involved with the Global Entrepreneurship Week for the last, 5 years. So on Monday, I really showed what best practices are there that we been experiencing for the last 8 years.
Can I ask you whether or not this varies according to country? Everybody's got maybe similar problems in some areas, but very different ones and approaches in others.
Yes, that's totally true, and that often is due to the fact that there are cultural differences in each country. So, for example, in the Netherlands, we see that entrepreneurs don't like to fail. And it's a shame that you fail. So, for example, we worked on the last, 4 years on really get the ambition going for entrepreneurs and saying that failing is a good thing because you get a lot of experience around it.
Michalis, what about you? You working presumably in this area of the Mediterranean, and I assume from your name particularly in Greece, yes, which has been going through its own very severe problems.
That's true, and that's how we decided to get involved in promoting entrepreneurship in the region. Greece and Cyprus is our first locations that we're starting to promote very concretely how to re-inspire the youth and help them go into entrepreneurship. And Industry Disruptor is the name of organization, which is the GEW host for Greece and Cyprus. And in this event that we did on Monday, what we wanted to show it's that when you see things positively and you work together, the big boys in entrepreneurial ecosystem like CETA, the institution like the municipality, and also the grassroots movements, the universities like Martin, which is from Erasmus Center of Entrepreneurship of Rotterdam University, then you can create innovation, inspire people, and help things move forward.
And it doesn't have to be either expensive or particularly something that you need experience at, does it? That's the great thing. Anybody can do this.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think the things that we teach at Erasmus University is that entrepreneurship is doing. Right? It's like being, if you want to be a good sportsman, you have to train a lot to get to that level. And it's the same for entrepreneurship. Not every entrepreneur will have his first successful company, at first glance. So what we do is we let students practice entrepreneurship during their studies and then, support them or empower them actually to start their venues and start small but have let's say big goals.
But big goals also need funding. Now, is the GEW and the industry disruptors, have you got contacts with venture capitalists, for example?
Yes, of course. As you know, both Greece and Cyprus are a bit, more conservative. They're afraid to go in the early stage where the risk is much higher. And we have to work very hard on this. But the whole system matures because it's a fact for Europe that big organizations and governments are not able anymore to make to hire people in a mass way that they used to. So the only solution is promoting entrepreneurship, and there are money. In general, there is a concentration of money, and people have money, but they're afraid to invest on this early stage. But I think gradually the whole system is maturing.
And it needs to mature, doesn't it? Because particularly in Greece and Cyprus, I don't know about in the Netherlands, the banks at the moment are not doing what banks traditionally have done, and that is funding new ideas, new businesses and startups.
Yeah. Here there is a new tool from the European Investment Bank They're called the Jeremy programs. And actually it's a tool that they providing 70% of the budget of the capital to create a fund, and 30% is by private money, in order to assist to push the ecosystem, to boost the ecosystem. And 70% is European funds. So that will also help. In Greece, that was what ignited the ecosystem 2 years ago, because all of a sudden there were 70 million euros to invest in ICT, in technology. And now in Cyprus they're working as well on Jeremy on how to create these funds, which is half governmental, 70% EU money, and the rest 30% from private equity and private investors. That will help as well.
Yeah, maybe just to add, because in the Netherlands we use the same program. The thing is that what you see in the Netherlands, it's the same. Banks don't want to invest in high-risk companies. So, for example, what we try to do is we try to involve, for example, VCs and business angels in an earlier stage of the company. So we try to involve them, for example, in the education or in the startup program. So from that way, they can really guide and sort of help these entrepreneurs grow their business. And at the point that they would then say, hey, this is interesting to invest in, they already know the track before, so they are much willing to invest in. And what's interesting then is that we are now talking a lot with banks, and they say, hey, if there is, let's say, a 50% investment from a business angel, from a VC, we are willing to invest afterwards, because the due diligence is already done by the specific VC or the business angel.
So the money probably is coming through slowly but surely. But you said something interesting just now, Michalis, about people not being able to get public service jobs anymore. Yeah. One of the problems, particularly in Greece and Cyprus, and I guess maybe in other areas of the Mediterranean around us, is this lack of innovation, because there has for so long been an assumption that a job will be provided, so you don't actually need to do anything.
Exactly. And first of all, the big bet for all this region is the change of mindset. This era was very good, created a virtual prosperity. Now it's done. We have to face reality and move forward in doing things on our own. And one of the key elements here is to connect research from the universities to the market, because until now a lot of funds, billions, have gone to research from the European Union to both Cypriot, Greek universities all over Europe. But the most important thing is how much of this research goes into the market, because until now it was going on, on the shelves, and was interim reports, that the job was done, but there was no actual innovation passing to the market, because at the end of the day, universities are creating the innovation.
And therefore universities have to cooperate very closely with entrepreneurs, with business angels, and with young people who need to start a business.
Of course. And
is that happening?
Step by step. Universities are more heavy institutions. They have used, for example, Erasmus Center of Entrepreneurship. They are amazing. We know we are more rookies in the GW family. We joined the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2 years ago, and actually they mentoring us on how to move forward. They have an amazing competition, Get in the Ring, which is an innovation competition, and we work together to establish it in Greece and Cyprus as well.
And you'll be back in Cyprus, I think, later in the year, because this is the kick-off event. So exactly. What comes next?
In June we will be here to do an intensive bootcamp and workshop, and then in September we're going to work a bit on access to finance and about scaling up small and medium enterprises, because 99.5% of European companies is small and medium enterprises. And then in November, which is the Global Entrepreneurship Week per se, it's the week that we are promoting entrepreneurship throughout cities throughout the world. And in November we're going to do a flagship event, a really big event with a competition and a lot of foreign speakers and workshops, and the whole thing is to bring together all the people that want to be part of this community and connect them. We work as to unleash all these productivity and willingness that there is, and make it happen. Let's disrupt Cyprus.
Now there's a challenge. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.